On this episode of the Turnbuckle, we have a huge update on Randy Orton's WWE status heading into Wrestlemania. CM Punk calls out Jon Moxley, Dave Meltzer, and Chris Jericho in a deleted Instagram story. And FTR says they will leave AEW if they are unable to win the AEW tag team titles. Folks, we're heading into some wrestling news with your... What in the world just happened to me? We're in your favorite wrestling move to some wrestling news. Jeez Louise, I've been gone for way too long, alright? Because it's time for the Turnbuckle. According to PWI Elite, Orton is scheduled to be at WrestleMania 39 weekend. While it has not been confirmed whether Orton will be appearing on camera or either night of WWE's flagship show or Raw the following Monday, it seems unlikely Orton would be flown in to just hang out backstage. This potential good news for Orton is a sharp contrast from late 2022 when it was reported that the Viper had undergone back fusion surgery, a procedure that would seem to sideline him for a significant period. In February, however, a report emerged that Orton had contacted a boot maker in order to design a new wrestling boot, hinting that a return would be happening sooner than expected. PWI further noted that internal discussion regarding Orton's status had recently popped up again within WWE. Prior to his disappearance, Orton had been teaming with Matt Riddle as RK Bro, holding the Raw Tag Team Championship before dropping them to the Usos in a unification match. With Riddle also MIA from WWE at the moment, it's unclear what direction Orton would take upon his eventual return. My biggest worry is that Orton is just gonna okay, so I don't remember where I heard this from. I think somebody said it online, and they were like, it could potentially, Orton could potentially be in a match with LA Knight, or LA Knight could like do a thing where he comes out and he goes, I want my moment, yeah, and then he gets RKO'd, and I don't want that to happen. I would prefer that if Randy's going to come back, it would be in a more like grandiose way, because, you know, everybody loves Randy Orton, and, you know, there were a lot of people, me included, right, who, were very concerned about Randy Orton's health and the future, you know, with the company and everything like that. And, if you remember back when we were talking about it, it didn't really seem like Randy was going to be back in the ring anytime soon. Now, they haven't really confirmed anything, right? They haven't really confirmed that Orton is going to, like, actually be in a match or anything like that, which I kind of understand because they don't really want to give anything away. And maybe everything is, like, still up in the air and stuff like that. And they don't want to say something's going to happen and Randy Orton actually can't do it. So I understand where they're coming from in the sense of like, hey, let's not really give a whole lot away at the moment, you know, let's see how Randy's feeling, you know, on the day and everything. But, and you know what, thinking about it now, I mean, even if they did go the whole like RKO thing, like that's the most that like Randy could do like on that day, you know. But then again, like if that's the most that he can do, then maybe the best thing to do would probably be to, you know, keep him off of TV until he's like 100%, because I don't want Randy to, you know, I don't want Randy to, like, get, like, any more injured than he already was, and I don't want everybody to think, oh, Randy's back, and then, you know, we don't see him for, like, another couple weeks. So, listen, folks, all we're gonna have to do right now is wait and see what they're gonna do with Randy, and if Randy will actually show up, right, to WrestleMania, and then, even if he does show up to WrestleMania, actually be involved in a match. So, only time will tell what's actually gonna happen with him, so we're just gonna have to wait and see. Next, we're gonna talk about CM Punk and how he calls out Jon Moxley, Dave Meltzer, and Chris Jericho in a deleted Instagram story. Former AEW World Champion CM Punk took to Instagram to share since-deleted grievances with Jon Moxley, Chris Jericho, and Wrestling Observer's Dave Meltzer. The situation appears to have sprung from a post that Meltzer made on the Figure 4 weekly message board, in which Meltzer says that Punk did not agree to lose the AEW Championship to Moxley after his foot injury earlier in the summer. Meltzer also says that Punk only went through with plans when AEW President Tony Khan put his foot down. Do you know why they didn't advertise Punk vs. Moxley longer and why it had a short build, says Meltzer? Because Punk agreed to it. Then AEW got a legal letter saying he wasn't down with it and wasn't doing it, and they didn't know if he'd come until Tony put his foot down. There are a lot of nice things I can say about him, and you can absolutely argue his position on Moxley was correct, but you can't argue he willingly did what he was asked in that scenario. Sigh, CM Punk wrote in the now deleted Instagram story, I wasn't cleared to wrestle yet. Then the plan was to wrestle at the pay-per-view. I sat and listened to Moxley's Rocky 3 idea. I'd explained how I'd never seen a Rocky movie, and I thought the idea sucked, but if the boss wanted to do it, whatever. He said he wouldn't lose to me. I never experienced someone refusing to lose to me, Punk continued. I just laughed. I asked Tony if this is what he wanted. He said yes. He's the boss, so I said, okay, but I need to be cleared first. They kept saying could just be a squash, so I didn't need to be cleared. I scoffed at that. My health is more important. Dave Meltzer is a liar. Jericho is a liar and a stooge. There were plans, but plans always change, but I'll never put a company above my health ever again. there's not really much I can say about this, mainly because it seems to be stemming from 3 different people's perspective on the matter. Someone also made a very poignant comment on Reddit the other day, saying how it seems like Meltzer is only getting his points from Jericho, seeming as how every time Meltzer always has something to talk about, always seems to line up with what Jericho is saying, and it doesn't really help that Jericho doesn't really like CM Punk, so a lot of the stuff that he says is going to be biased, right? And I mean, this is coming from the guy who said that CM Punk was a literal cancer in the locker room, so it doesn't really sound like a lot of the comments that Punk is going to make about Jericho are going to be, very good ones. We have heard absolutely no rumblings of anything, right, in regards to CM Punk's status and his AEW contract and how Tony Khan feels about him and all that sort of stuff. It's been absolutely radio silent. Now, there's a saying out there that says no news is good news. So you'd figure you don't hear anything about, Punk and Khan and all that sort of stuff. So obviously that must tell you a different side of the story. But then again, it's the same thing about Mercedes Moné, about, you don't know the full story. Okay, well, if we don't know anything, then we can only speculate based off of the information that we're given. And if we're wrong about it, then how's about you do everybody a favor, come out and tell us what's actually going on so we have some context. But then somebody left a comment on the video that I posted on Tuesday, which is fair. And they were like, oh, she doesn't have to say anything. Tony Khan doesn't have to say anything. Technically, Moxley and Moxley and Jericho don't have to say anything, even though Jericho put a story on Instagram where he was like, where he did the Matt Hardy delete thing and that sort of stuff. And it's, oh my God. Punk's not done with AEW. He's coming back at some point. Meltzer is getting his news from a biased source. At least that's where, listen, okay? That's my opinion. That is my opinion. Meltzer is getting his news from a biased source. And I think Chris Jericho needs to understand where Punk is coming from and understand where everybody else is coming from, because I don't think it's fair that he's saying all this stuff and he's calling him a cancer and he's not even going to the guy and asking him about it, right? So at the end of the day, folks, there's not really much else that we can really say about this whole thing. So hopefully we're done talking about this, and the next time we hear about it, CM Punk will be back in AEW and everybody will shake hands and we'll be friends again. Finally, FTR will leave AEW if they can't defeat the Guns for the tag team titles. FTR threw down a proclamation during Wednesday's Dynamite that if they can't defeat the Guns for the tag titles, they will leave AEW. Following the Guns' successful title defense against Top Flight, thanks to interference from the Kingdom, FTR came out to deliver the message personally. Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler said they were out to talk business, but Austin and Colton Guns said there was nothing they could do to earn a shot at them, even if it meant no more title shots with a loss. Wheeler then offered that they would split up in AEW if they lost, and Austin still refused. Harwood then upped the ante with their departure if the Guns defeated them, and it was accepted, followed by the champions spitting in FTR's faces. I don't really think that they should leave. I don't necessarily... Okay, so their contract is up. What is it? April? I think their contract is up in April. So it kind of makes sense why they're making this proclamation in the first place. It's kind of like Randy Orton. Like, I don't see why they would go through with something like this. It just doesn't really make sense. Well, it makes sense because given the timing, but is it me? Why do I feel so weird about this? How they're just written, like, they've come back, they've been gone for so long, and everybody has been clamoring for them to come back, and now they're finally coming back, and the first thing that they do when they come back is they challenge for the tag titles, but if they lose, then they leave. Like, what? That doesn't... I think that if you're going to have somebody be a champion, you have to hammer home the fact that this is the champion of the company. They are the tag team champions of All Elite Wrestling. They are the best tag team, which is why they have the tag team championships. So the fact that they immediately lose them, and the fact that they've been winning them off of like a bunch of fluke wins and stuff, it's not doing anything for their character, and it's diminishing the quality of the... Well, okay, it's not diminishing the quality of the titles. I got a little bit ahead of myself there. It's diminishing the quality of the tag team itself because they're not actually winning clean. And then they get smacked up by FTR, and now nobody's going to have any confidence in a man. So hopefully the Guns win, and listen, sad face, FTR lose, and listen, maybe this means that the FTR are going to go to Ring of Honor, or maybe they're going to go to New Japan, or who knows, maybe they're going to go right back to WWE, and they're going to be the Revival again, and, it's going to be great, and everyone's going to be saying, yeah, but not for LA Knight, so at this point, it's really hard to say what's going to happen, so only time will tell, and we'll have to wait and see. What did we talk about? If Randy Orton does come back, right, and he does make his return to WrestleMania, and he is going to be in a match, and it is going to be a full match, and it's going to be against somebody like LA Knight or Bobby Lashley, great. If Randy Orton comes to WrestleMania, and it's not a match, and it's only a segment, and all he does is hit the RKO, and he does his pose, and then he leaves, Ugh. There's so many different moving parts and variables that it's practically impossible to nail down what could potentially happen and why it could potentially happen. It's the same thing with the CM Punk thing. Like, there's so many, you gotta figure CM Punk says this, and then people are like, oh, well, CM Punk's lying, and oh, CM Punk isn't gonna come back to the AEW, and oh, Tony Khan's gonna fire CM Punk. And then you look at Meltzer, and oh, Meltzer's old, and Meltzer doesn't know what he's talking about, and he's getting his sources from a biased source, or not even that, oh, he's getting his sources from some stupid area or something like that, or blah blah Meltzer. And then you look at Jericho. Oh, Jericho's saying this because he doesn't like Mox, or he doesn't like Punk. And oh, Jericho, you know, he's obviously gonna have like a bias against him, and he's the one who called him a cancer and everything like that. And you look at Moxley. Oh, Moxley's not saying anything. But then you got to take into account that Moxley didn't want to lose to CM Punk. So what does that say about Punk? What does that say about Moxley? You know, then you got to think about Jericho, and then you got to think about and then you got to think about Meltzer with Jericho, and then Meltzer with CM Punk, and what everybody's saying. Oh, the Guns have been in fantastic matches, right, on paper, but the way that they've been winning and just the way that they've been showcased. Now, listen, I don't really think anything, right, negative of the Guns. That's why I'm sitting here screaming about the fact that I don't want them to lose. But then it kind of just, it muddies up the storyline with FTR. So, like, what do you do? Only Tony Khan is going to know about that, folks, okay? What is going on, man? Somebody please help me. On that note, folks, that's going to do it for this episode. And hopefully everybody has a wonderful tonight and a wonderful tomorrow. And as always, big hugs. Big hugs all around.